Good morning, everyone. Please find a seat if you can. Just a few people sitting down. Well, good morning. On behalf of Google, and personally, I want to welcome you to this global discussion on the power of open. My name is Alfred Spector, and I am the Vice President of Research and Special Initiatives at Google and the Senior Engineering Leader of Google.org, which is our philanthropic arm at Google as well. We're very honored to have you all here, and we're honored to be asked to host this event with such esteemed visitors. I want to give special thanks to President Aquino and the Republic of the Philippines for being here, to the co-chairs and full steering committee of the Open Government Partnership, along with Julie McCarthy, and to thank you to everyone else from government, civil society, and other government leaders who have laid literally the fiber of openness across the globe. This is a very important topic, this topic of open government, and one we encounter every day. In fact, believe it or not, last week I was hiking in the mountains of Yosemite National Park at an elevation of 3,000 or 4,000 meters, away from all telecommunications, and I struck up conversations with the occasional other hikers that I met. The first was with an accountant who told me that because all of the accounting rules, both the tax rules in this country and generally accepted accounting principle rules, were on the web, she was maybe 2 or 3 times more productive in her activities because of that. And I remembered thinking, I'm giving this talk, and I should mention the availability of this governmental and quasi-governmental information on the web was fundamentally changing, and I find out even when I'm in the mountains of Yosemite. I talked to another person who was involved in California politics in one way or another, and this individual was rather distressed that the recent redistricting information in California was not available on the web. And she could not find it, and what were we doing wrong, and how come it wasn't available? And she needed this information to actually do her job right. I understand from others that we're working on this to try to help make this available. And these are just a couple of things. They're far more important things as we think about transparency in government, but even when far away, we hear these. So today, we're here to take a very important step in building the Open Government Partnership and to share perspectives from around the world on the power of open. And we'll focus on 3 elements in our interest in this. First, at Google, we fundamentally believe in the power of people. We believe in the capacity of people to innovate and create change. No better examples than all of you in this room. Each of you is an innovator, and real change can come from the hard work you've done, the precedents you've set, and the risks you've made to reform how governments and communities cooperate. Second, and very importantly, is the power of trust. In our global economy, trust is an invaluable currency. In fact, it may be the killer app in this digital age. It's critical to the relationship between all institutions and individuals. And the establishment of trust, I think, most easily starts with transparency. If individuals understand what is going on, mostly good, sometimes bad, I think that buildup of trust happens much faster. You all have shown us that the more open governments are with their citizens and entrepreneurs and partners, the better opportunities they create and the more successful their societies can be. As a technologist, it's worthwhile for me to just say a little bit about the role of technology in this. We've reached a critical intersection where government's willingness to open up services and information is truly aided by the lowering cost and the global ubiquity of technology. Things have changed so much, even in 5 years and certainly in 10, that with minimal work, governments can allow the public to visualize information on maps or interact with information in useful and intuitive ways. And not just a small part of the public, but now with the growth of mobile phones everywhere and the vast numbers of mobile phones, with very, very large numbers of the public all around the world. Information can educate, it can inform, it can allow response to natural disasters, it can make governments more responsive and efficient and more connected to the broad population. So I can tell you that we are committed to do our part as technologists to continue to help organize that information and make it universally accessible and useful to the citizens of the world. Third message is the power of open systems and technology that support it. We fundamentally believe that open systems win. Open systems lead to more innovation, resources, and freedom for citizens, and a vibrant competitive ecosystem to create jobs and to grow economies. Open systems, which include a myriad of policies and practices along with standards, with technologies of open source where people can build things together, have already shown the potential to spawn whole new industries and bring increased creativity by letting people work together all around the world. They allow better commerce and more effective decision-making across our respective sectors and communities. Open systems allow innovations at all levels, establishing meritocracies that harness the intellect of the people and spur sectors to compete and innovate and win based on the real value of their ideas and their products and services, not on corruption, not on cronyism, or not on stasis, not on just what we've been doing in the past, whether good or bad. We believe that open systems are the way to have the broadest impact for most people. We believe in their power to deliver information and in the power of information to do good, to inspire enthusiastic innovators who will seize on opportunities and create inventions that benefit people in ways we can't fathom. If we even think about in the world of mobile telephony and these smart apps that people say, who could have envisioned that people could come up with nearly, probably across all these platforms, 1 million new computer applications in the course of 5 years, some of which are duplicative, some of which are no doubt silly, but many of them are extremely creative and important. And it's only been a few years as we've moved into mobile telecommunications, an extremely rapidly growing area. I think the work you all do to build open systems will fundamentally improve how our communities and industries and societies grow. I have no doubt it will have a huge impact, and we at Google say thank you. Today we have 46 governments joining from all the corners of the world, standing together today as they launch the Open Government Partnership, and they say with one voice that openness is an essential pillar of 21st century governance. We hope that more governments will follow. You've all come here today to share, to learn, and to collaborate, and to be open. So in the spirit of openness, let's make all those interactions occur. Let's be honest about how we can all make your hard work easier, and don't shy away from sharing bold, if not difficult, visions for the Open Government Partnership's future. You're in a place here at Google that applauds big ideas, and as I said, we're very grateful to have you here. So let me now turn this over to the Open Government Partnership Steering Committee, co-chairs U.S. Undersecretary of State Maria Otero and Brazil's Minister of State Jorge Haj. Maria?
Good morning. Thank you so much, and thank you to Google for its generous hospitality as we are celebrating this momentous occasion, which is the formal launch of the Open Government Partnership. It's really wonderful to be here, and I'm especially thankful for the New York subway system, because there were no taxis to be had anywhere near the Waldorf. So I am here because of the subway system. So I do want to take a moment, and I especially want to thank Ginny Hunt, Michelle Roser-Sapin, Phase One Consulting, and Julie McCarthy for putting together this really top-notch event. I want to give them the thanks from all of us for all the hard work that they have done. We have a full day of some of the finest minds in this space, all of which are in high demand at all times, but especially now as the UN General Assembly Week is taking off. So it's really an honor to have you here with us. And of course, I especially want to recognize His Excellency, President Benigno Aquino, for being here with us, and for all the many other dignitaries that are here in attendance. I do want to thank you for being here. As you heard, I am Maria Otero. I'm the Undersecretary for Democracy and Global Affairs at the Department of State, and I have the great pleasure of co-chairing the Open Government Partnership with Minister Jorge Haj from Brazil, and we have been working together in this effort. In fact, for us, this is a big day. Just 1 year ago, President Obama called on governments around the world to recommit to transparency, to accountability, to increase civil engagement, and to harness the new technologies available to us in the pursuit of better governance around the world. And here we are, just 1 year later, with a steering committee of the Open Government Partnership full and functioning, and welcoming no less than 38 additional countries as they are joining us to really stretch the limits of government in the 21st century. Let me just say that again. We think this is remarkable. It's beyond what we had expected. 38 governments, in addition to the 8 founding members of this initiative. And they have committed themselves not only to open governments, which is a wonderful aspirational thing to be able to be in agreement with, but they've committed themselves to action. 46 total governments that, with the help of civil society and with the help of the private sector, will take concrete steps in order to make their governments work better, be more responsive to their citizens, and be able to serve better. The really phenomenal point about this effort, even beyond the number of countries that have come forward, is that they have signed up voluntarily. It is entirely out of the appreciation for the open government's founding premise that open is good for all of us, open is good for governments. And we are seeing this around the world. Technology and social media are opening communications. They're opening the communication channels, they're increasing the awareness and the dialogue really in every quarter of society. And we see that playing itself out wherever it is that we look in the world. Open source innovations are introducing new solutions to old bureaucracies. They're resulting in more access to knowledge. They're resulting in more input from citizens into the way in which governments operate. And we all know that information is power. In the hands of citizens and officials alike, open information can really mean a change that moves us towards progress. So I want to thank the leadership of the steering committee of the Open Government Partnership. Many of you are here in this room because you really are setting the example for the rest of the governments around the world, and you have put yourself forth to develop a plan and to make this happen even within your own bureaucracies. We're demonstrating that the Open Government Partnership Declaration, which is going to be launched today in our new website, that openness can allow you to do your jobs better, and it can also help you to respond to your people. Now, we've crafted an ambitious set of action plans at the country level, which are surrounded by concrete steps, and they are informed by civil society. This is not governments working alone, but working in collaboration with NGOs and with other organizations that have developed real expertise in this area and that can bring true additionality to moving governments towards becoming more open. Now, these plans are going to continue to evolve, but I can tell you that we are already making a difference in the way in which governments think and talk and act. We have told the world about what we are doing, and the world has responded. This afternoon, as we welcome these 38 new countries, it's not going to be just in their commitment to open government, but also in their promise to work with their own civil societies in a plan towards greater openness. We are not being Pollyannish about this. We know that governance is not easy, it's not simple, and it's not going to be something that can be done without bumps. But good governance should be the foundation on which we face the world's problems. So today, with the launch of the Open Government Partnership, we embrace this concept of openness as one of the levers to our success. And we do this in the company of all of you here in this room that are also dedicating time, energy, and enormous talent to this effort. So I want to thank you for your ideas, for your support, and I wish you the best as you proceed today in the important work that you will be doing and in the important work that the panelists and the speakers will be bringing to this effort. Now it's my pleasure to turn it over to my co-chair, Minister George Hodge, who's the Controller General of Brazil and who has been a lifelong advocate for transparency, for anti-corruption, and for open governments. Thank you.
Mr. Alfred Spector, Vice President of Google, Undersecretary Maria Otero, my co-chair, with whom we have been working together for the last few months, Mr. President Aquino from the Philippines. It's an honor for all of us to have you joining here today. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the 8 countries of the Steering Committee, NGOs, civil society organizations that also integrate the committee, new countries that have engaged in the number of 38 as mentioned here, this initiative. Good morning for all, and to our OGP conference, The Power of Open. I would like, first of all, to congratulate my colleagues in the OGP, both in government and in the civil society organizations, and also our host, Google, and other private sector companies that have been collaborating with this initiative for this great event, where Google is our host. As we gather here this morning, on this important day of the formal launch of the initiative, I would like to invite you just to step back for a second and look back to January, when we first met in Washington, D.C., in an initiative where none of us knew exactly where it was going to lead us. We only knew that we were a group of governments and civil society organizations interested in openness, in increasing transparency in government, and in increasing the ways and the mechanisms of participation, of communication with people, government and people individually considered, and people gathered in organizations or in private sector business, in order to improve the level of the public services, starting from better knowing what the demands are, and worried also in improving the level of democracy in practice. A new kind of directly participating democracy which is made possible through technology. The Greek ideal of democracy by the direct participation of people in the political decisions, of course it's impossible to think about that in the present world. But we have a new opportunity to create a new kind of direct participating democracy side by side with the institutions of representative democracy. We have this because of technology progress that gives this opportunity, makes it possible. My country is very pleased and honored to be part of this effort from the beginning, from the very beginning, to join and to be joined by other countries that have demonstrated also a strong commitment and political will to move forward on this direction. The direction of greater transparency, the direction of more and easier access to information, the direction of better management of public resources, the direction of more integrity in the managing of resources, both in public and in private organizations and corporations. We live in this moment in the world, an extraordinary moment, because at one side we have been facing the challenges of different kinds of crises, all sorts of crises, economic crisis, social crisis, and also natural crisis that have put government in face of extraordinary challenges to give adequate answers and response to that. And on the other side, we see countries that did not know yet the experience of democracy asking for this, asking for what has been called the spring of democracy for new countries. This adds to our responsibility to show them that democracy can be effective. It's not easy to take decisions in a democratic way. But I think this initiative can play a very important and historical role in this process. In our case, we have been developing our plan of commitments that from this day on, like all the other 7 members of the steering committee, our plans are exposed in the portal, can be accessed by internet, by any person that is interested in this. Our plan is already there, both in Portuguese and in English. It was a very rich process to come to this plan. It's not a plan elaborated by the government unit itself alone. We had to engage all different sectors of our federal government, which is not a simple task, because governments are not necessarily homogeneous or monolithic. Governments are an amount of different leaders and different people with different degrees of sensibility for the transparency issue. So it's the first challenge that I make this alert or I put our experience for the new countries that are joining us in this moment. You will have to pass to the experience of engaging all sectors of your government. And on the other side, to create the ways to make the consultation to the civil society and to the relevant private sector institutions, so that your plans of commitment are not the plans that have been thought by one person or one governmental body, but actually a plan that represents the country as a whole. We are also convinced and conscious that this is not the final plan, this is not the complete moment, this is the beginning of a permanent process of growing, advancing year by year. And the OGP is going to establish also important mechanisms for monitoring, for evaluating, self-assessment, and also international experts assessment, so that our initiative has to be taken very seriously, and we are sure we will succeed in the implementation of our plans as much as we have succeeded in this initial period in the elaboration of those. Having this said, I have the honor to introduce President Aquino from the Philippines. I would like to give the floor to His Excellence, our partner country from the beginning. Our colleague, the minister, is in front of me here. He has been one of our champions, both in enthusiasm, in his clear vision of what we have to achieve. And I congratulate the Philippines to be here represented by its highest authority. Thank you very much.
Mr. Alfred Spector, His Excellency Jorge Hags, Honorable Maria Otero, members of our official and accompanying delegation, namely Secretary Del Rosario, Quisha, Rojas, Purisima, Domingo, Suliman, Abad, and Carandang, Ambassador Libran Kabaktulan, and Consul General Mari De Leon, Ambassador Joey Quisha, honored guests. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Wherever you turn, the world is in flux, whether it is the Arab Spring in the Middle East, the economic turbulence in the United States and Europe, or the consequences of natural calamity in Japan. A profound re-examination of the relationship between governments and their citizens is taking place, as the world economic system is being reordered. At the heart of this re-examination is a fundamental reality governments throughout history have ignored at their peril. Governments exist at the sufferance of their people. Where there is no openness on the part of government, there can be no unity of purpose and action between the people and their leaders. Where government is open with its people, there you will find national solidarity of purpose and of action. In the past, before the advent of modern communications technologies, governments could lull themselves into thinking that even if they lacked popular consent, they had the luxury of time to play deaf and dumb to their people's needs. What took 14 long years from 1972, when Filipinos had their democracy replaced with dictatorship, to 1986, when my countrymen restored our democracy, can today happen much quicker. We have seen the manner in which social media can expose corruption and other abuses and arouse public opinion to mobilize and reclaim their government. The ever-quickening pace of communications and ever-increasing opportunities for engaging in conversations across sectors and borders is both a boon and a bane. Anyone with access to an internet connection can reach millions of people and dispense pearls of wisdom, or perversely, misinform and mislead in pursuit of a selfish agenda. Government must open itself to those pearls of wisdom wherever and whenever they may originate. But then, what of those who prefer untruths, half-truths, or outright lies to create rather than solve problems? The answer for all of us called to public service lies in recognizing that engaging our fellow citizens in dialogue positively reinforces a culture of openness. This in turn banishes the opacity that breeds both a temptation among those in power to engage in crimes and popular mistrust of government. A continuing conversation between government and its citizens builds a positive, powerful connection between individual leaders and citizens, fostering the reintegration of government with society as a whole. In other words, openness inspires trust, which is the foundation of a genuine partnership. This sense of partnership makes us better equipped to navigate the turbulent waters in our age of flux. Allow me to cite a few brief examples of how this can be done. We have empowered the citizenry to report cases of corruption in a website known in Filipino as Pera ng Bayan or the People's Money, which has led to 127 cases filed since the site was launched on November 17, 2010. We also have our official gazette going online as the government portal. On the principle that legislation and other regulations must be freely accessible to all, it is working to make over a century's worth of legislation and executive issuances freely available to the public. Our budget department has put data on budgetary releases online, while bids for government contracts are posted online for all to see. Citizens now get traffic updates and obtain weather updates and storm signal warnings on Twitter, obtaining information online or in their cell phones. In fact, the cell phone helps cut red tape and bring government closer to the people. Take the example of a province of ours called Eastern Samar, where the poor conditions of a 579 lineal meter section of the Right Taft Gian Road was reported to our Department of Public Works and Highways via an SMS, allowing this department to take quick action and immediately undertake construction and repair work. The Philippine national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, back in the 19th century, when the printing press proved the crucible for our national identity, warned of the consequences of government being blind and deaf to the grievances of the people. Demoralization, I quote, and he wrote, cannot be corrected by sealing the lips of accusers, but by the government inquiring into the cause, persecuting the crime, and letting fall who may fall. His exposing the injustices in Philippine society ignited the Philippine Revolution against Spain. I believe that it is incumbent on all of us to confidently assert that governments that do things right should have no problem keeping our fellow citizens informed and engaged, and are thus partners of government in its fundamental task of addressing the needs of the people. The result is an empowered citizenry, which is the essential aspiration at the heart of the digital revolution sweeping the globe, where technology liberates the individual and renews a sense of solidarity between the public and private sectors. As a member of the OGP Steering Committee, we are therefore not only excited but derive strength from working together to achieve our shared aspirations. By means of national action plans informed by the successes and lessons each of us can share with each other, the best practices from our individual national milieus can become a source of collective strength, making a living reality of the Declaration of Principles on Open Government. Thank you and good day.
Folks, please don't all rush off somewhere. We're already a bit late, and we're going to start the moment they get our chairs up here, which is now. So let me introduce Mo Ibrahim. Karen Lissikers and Tim Berners-Lee. Actually, if you two would come in one. As you see, Dr. Ndemo is not here. Somehow, to be transparent, I have to tell you that the mayor's office took him to the UN for some reason. And we're not sure if he's going to come back. But that gives us a little extra time, just in case. This session is going to be not government officials, but people out on the ramparts fighting for transparency. And each of them is going to talk for 5 minutes about their favorite topics. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing them. I just want to say one thing, which is that transparency is not simply governments opening themselves up. It's also people asking questions. So our panel is going to be a model of that. And after our three speakers have spoken, we're going to rely on you to ask them some questions. And with that, I'd like to start with Mo Ibrahim, please.
Thank you very much. I'll get straight to the point. I understand I have only 5 minutes, so I have to be quick here. I come from Africa, and we see the issue of openness and transparency in Africa is crucial for us to move forward. That's why my foundation, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, is really focusing on one issue only, which is the issue of governance, good governance. We think that really is the start of all good things. At the heart of good governance is transparency and openness. For that reason, one of the key projects actually we do in Africa is that of the index. What is the index? The index is a publication we do every year where we measure all aspects of governance in every African country. We have 53 countries in Africa. What is governance about is about the deliverables, the basket of deliverables the government need to deliver to their people. So the area of safety and security, rule of law, participation, democracy, public finance, and the artery of commerce, etc., education, health, gender issues, all this stuff. We measure 88 indicators in every country. We need to know exactly what is happening. How many kilometers of roads have been paved this year? How many seats in the schools have been created? How many hospital beds? Inflation, jobless, employment, the issue of participation, which is much bigger than just democracy. Democracy is not about election every 4 years. It's a whole process of citizen participation, and the heart of it is transparency and the ability of citizens to really exercise their rights. To our knowledge, no other part of the world is really subjected to such intensive scrutiny. The objective of this really is to give the citizens of each country the chance to know exactly what is going on, what has been done. So far, we all aware our presidents and speech writers, and every president goes up and says, wow, we have done wonderful things, etc., etc. But where exactly is the food on the table? What exactly have they done? They never tell us, of course, the numbers, and we're really about exactly what happened in every sector in life there. So it's also a tool which helps the governments to assess what they're doing, what is work, what does work, and what doesn't work. We rank all the countries according to the performance in each of these indicators, etc. We publish that widely across Africa. We take pages of advertisement in major newspaper in every country. We distributed CDs to universities, parliaments, judiciary, public opinion, all the active people, and the government officials too. We want really to switch the light on. We think that is the best way to really move forward. I think my 5 minutes are up. I stop here.
You actually, I didn't count. I think you're a bit early. So let me ask you one question right now. Where did the data come from? Do you believe what the governments tell you, or do you now use mobile phones and the populations to generate?
We use various means. To start with, we have agreements with 23 organizations worldwide, with the World Bank, with the United Nations, WHO, Transparency International, The Economist, Intelligence Unit. Anybody who collect any credible data about Africa, we have an agreement to get the raw data, to scrub it. Not all of the data, unfortunately, are usable. We try to use that. We check with governments themselves. And in many areas where we find gaps, we commission research and try to get our own data. That is the most comprehensive. We cannot do it alone. It would be stupid to try to do it alone. But we have this wonderful cooperation between the whole international organization or any interested bodies to do that. And for those partners, we are very grateful.
And what's been the impact? Can you give us, I mean, how are you encouraged or discouraged at this point?
Absolutely. We find it that the presidents who are, the countries who do well, we found the president go to the United Nations here and boast in their speeches that we have moved up 10 places in the index. We know the international development ministers everywhere. First thing they look at this because that will be the basis of discussion, etc. We know the Millennium Challenge Corporation here. They look at our stuff and they use it. We know, I mean, Raj of USAID said publicly that they use our index to assess development in different countries. So people really looked at, companies look at it because it gives the idea about what's transparent, what's hard. And it's free, it's available, it's downloadable. And what's important also, it gives huge amount of that. This is about 300 pages of just data. And it gives a great insight to a lot of academics. We have a number of people doing PhDs trying to see what is the link between development, rule of law, economic development, which comes first, how these things link together, what's the relationship between different, and so this is a mine, gold mine really of data, which is used by lots of people, all in the development cause.
Okay, thanks. We'll come back to that and people get your questions ready. One other thing you wanted to talk about was natural resources, and Karen Lissikers is an expert in that from the World Resource Watch Institute. Sorry.
Morning, Revenue Watch Institute. Good morning. It's really a thrill to be here in the middle of such a large gathering of government officials and civil society and business, all committed to exercising the power of open. I want to make a few comments about the costs of closed, because the costs of closed are manifest and concrete in many, many of the countries that we work in, countries that are very rich in mineral resources, but also extremely poor. To reference Africa, in 2008, Africa exported some $400 billion worth of commodities. How big a share of the returns on that money stayed in Africa, benefited the African people? Very, very little. And that is a direct cost of closed. Until this past decade, when civil society launched really a global concerted campaign to open the mineral sectors to public scrutiny, secrecy was the norm. It was the standard practice. Secret contracts, secret production, secret revenue streams, secrecy between companies and the public, secrecy between the government and its citizens on whose behalf these public resources were supposed to be managed, even secrecy among government agencies. I cannot tell you how many finance ministers have commented to me that they don't know how much money the mining ministry is taking in. They don't know how much money the state oil company is taking in. It doesn't show up on the public accounts. It doesn't show up in the public treasury. Now, we're dealing here, as I said, with a public asset. But these public assets historically have not been subject to rules of disclosure and public accountability. Now the whole power of open is finally beginning to be felt in the mineral sectors, thanks to public pressure on politicians, thanks to enlightened politicians, thanks to innovative initiatives like the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, thanks to new disclosure rules, for example, just adopted in the United States last year for extractive companies, and thanks to a new approach and new thinking by leaders like Mo Ibrahim, and indeed by new approach by many of the leading mineral companies, and thanks increasingly to new technologies. Just to give one example, we work in Guinea. Guinea is one of the poorest resource-rich countries in the world. There's a new government now that has decided to change the game, to put every mineral contract under a legal regime. They have created a new mining code that was drafted through public consultation, which meant that the government could benefit from independent experts. It could benefit from public input, and the code has been approved by the transitional legislature. We estimate that the new provisions in that code, just on iron ore royalties alone, will probably yield Guinea more than $3 billion a year in additional revenues, just from that one mineral. And because that mining code also includes very strong transparency and anti-corruption principles and rules, the odds are much better than before that that money will actually go where it should go, and that the public will be able to track where it's going, because all transactions will be subject to public audit. That can have a huge development impact in Guinea. And we are seeing more and more countries, not just in Africa, but in Asia. Indonesia is moving very strongly in this direction of transparent management of its resources. The new government in the Philippines is indicating it wants to, and around the world in Latin America. And we think that and hope that the Open Government Partnership, which includes many, many resource-rich countries, will be a catalyst to consolidate the transparency movement, to set new global norms, to ensure transparent and accountable use and management of these very valuable resources. And in an ideal world, since we are sitting here at Google headquarters, we hope that in the not too distant future, and we are working on this, there will be a tool that citizens can use on their cell phone or on their computers to click on a geographic spot and see who is mining there, who has the legal license, how much they are producing per month or per quarter or per year, how much they're earning from that production, and how much revenue the state is taking in from that production. That will be a really powerful tool of open. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. It's worth noting that you're surrounded. Mo Ibrahim, in essence, brought cell phones to Africa, and Tim Berners-Lee brought the World Wide Web to the world. So he's going to talk to. Go ahead.
So what to talk about? Well, first of all, it's wonderful to be at this occasion. So I've spent a lot of time trying to persuade governments to put their data onto the web. And I worked with a lot of people in various governments, various countries, including the UK and the US, where there was leadership from the top, where at the prime ministerial level or the presidential level, there was a statement, this is really important for the country. That has been very important. Some of us who, obviously it's been important to have it at the top. Also, it's been important at the grassroots level to have passionate people working in government who was just making, who are judging their week on to what extent they've been able to make it true and put a little bit more data out there and feed those people who are actually finding it so beneficial. So it's all the way through the stack. Don't forget the middle either. From the ministers down, the people who in the middle are going to not block it for some ancient political reason or out of fear or lack of understanding. So at all levels of the hierarchy, including the top, it's been very important. And some of us have felt a little worried that these things have been from the top but national. And what about the international? The World Wide Web Consortium has had groups meeting internationally. There are lots of international bodies represented here. But to get this combined from the top international open government partnership that's starting being launched today, right out there, holding even the people at the top accountable for this is very valuable. So what was I going to talk? What should I talk about of all the things which I can talk about after a few years of trying to push this stuff along? I think a lot of people have talked about how this open data is very valuable for transparency. Transparency is very important. So I'll pick something else. I'll pick the fact that all this data is very valuable just because it's very valuable. Mo hinted at it when he talked about goldmine of this data. So in what sense is this a goldmine? Well, if you're running a company in a country and say you're selling theatre equipment, suppose you sell lights like we have around here, well, it would be nice to know where the theatres are. In some places, you can find out where the theatres are because there's a map which is open and it has data. You can pull the data from the map and find out where the theatres are. In other places, the theatres are open because there's a government agency which regulates theatres and it has a big list and it's put it on the web. And in other places, it's just difficult to do business because you'd have to travel around in a truck asking people whether they've been to the theatre recently. Okay, these could be countries at the same level of development. Okay, they could be countries the same in every other way, but it's just a whole lot easier to do business in a country where there's data about that country. It's not only useful for businesses, of course it's also useful if you're an NGO, it's just easier, and actually it's also easier if you're in government. So many stories about people within government who've only actually been able to do their job properly when the data they needed from another department was made public. When they had to go through the interdepartmental system to get the data, they just didn't bother. So they actually operated with a blindness to that. If you imagine you run a large company, maybe it's a multinational company, and you find out that one part of the company is operating completely oblivious of the situation in another company. Maybe somebody's building things without knowing how many of the pieces they need to build it are actually in production. Or maybe they have no idea about the prices that are being sold. The same thing is being sold for another part of the world. There you have a broken company. It's not working properly. It's not using the data within itself. It's not competing with other companies. Same thing for countries. When a country has got this transparency of data, it means it runs better. It runs like a well-oiled machine instead of like a clunky machine. It means that less time is spent worrying about things, people doing research. That time is actually spent not even by a person browsing the web, it's spent by a computer program which runs around collecting all the data. The great thing about this data is compared to the web pages which have been out there before it was put out there as data, it's actually put there in a format so that technically machines can process it. So that once it's out there, everything, all the companies around the world run more effectively. There's this really, really difficult to measure economic benefit that comes to the whole world as general data becomes available. It's difficult to measure because actually the value of your data isn't very great when you put it out there. Somebody just mentioned to me this morning that there's very often they found people get a letdown. Well, they work really hard to put the data out there, and then when they put it out there, first thing they get is complaints that actually it's not it's not very good data. And because, so all data is imperfect, and you should realize as a data consumer that it is. That it's, and also, so what's the immediate benefit? Well, you know, it's like, can you imagine like the first telephone or the first web page, they're not inherently very exciting. It's when you connect it to other ones. So when you put your data out there, and it gets connected to data from another department about the same thing, that is when you get this, that benefit. And it may not be you that get the benefit. That's the thing about working for this huge common cause of open data. It'll be lots of other people get the benefit. Now, today, we can look forward to very much that added benefit that comes when you put some data out there from in your country, and other people have fortunately thought about putting similar data out there from in their countries, and as a result, we all get a better view of the whole world. And boy, if there's any time when we have really needed to have a good view of the whole world, it's now. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, you can clap. Thanks. So I have a few questions teed up, but I'd like to first try and challenge you. If there's somebody in the audience with a question, just raise your hand, say who you are, and go ahead, right over there. Oh, and they'll bring you a mic.
Hello, Lucas Chaffee with Online Town Halls. And the question is about top-down and bottom-up solutions. So I've been in the open government space for a while, and it's hard for me to get excited about resource extraction and transparency until I hear the compelling story that you're telling. So how can the public get more excited about these ideas? Because it seems like the problem is that it's not any one individual's problem, it's all of our problems. And then, and perhaps the answer to this following question is no, but is there a way for public that is inspired in one nation, which realizes the benefits of transparency on resource extraction, is there a way for them to communicate it to a public in another nation that has not yet awakened to this issue?
Okay, why don't we start with Mo, since you wanted to talk about resources, and how is your index used mostly by journalists and business and government people, or how much is the public aware of what you're doing? And does that matter? Will the press take care of it, or how do you reach? And Karen, same thing for you in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very appropriate question. In our activities, we're trying to connect with African people. So it's not about just publishing some academic papers in our website and or dishing out discs or whatever. What we do is first we go around Africa. I speak a lot, and many people in my foundation, we speak at universities, mainly. We hold very regular what we call civil society conversation. We have 200 people in the room, business people, activists, NGOs, MPs, judges, etc. And we have one conversation around really these issues of... hello.
Welcome. We'll catch you in a moment.
So we have this conversation really about what we're doing. As I said, we take advertisements in newspapers. We engage things. We have another projects where every year we have an annual prize for the African leader who came to power in a democratic manner, served very well to a very high standard, and left on time, democratically. And this is the largest prize in the world. It's about $7 million. And those presidents then spend, because we say there's life after office. There can be a wonderful life. And they spend their life then, they don't need to worry about money, but they go around Africa talking to kids, to schools, etc., about their experience, what they have done. So when I have the president of Botswana, who is one of our winners, going around telling people Botswana is a model country which used its natural resources effectively. It moved now to a middle-income country. It's a great success story in Africa, and has a democratic process now for almost 25 years. It's a wonderful story. And so this President Mokhai goes around Africa telling kids his story, how he started as a little boy, how he managed to go to Oxford, what he learned there, what he did when he came to serve, why he did what he did, what kind of decision he had to make in power, how he managed to move his country forward. And these are the role models we now want to give to Africans. I mean, I love football, but I don't think footballers are the role models for our kids. I think it's people like Mukhai, people like Mandela, this is the guys who are presenting all over the place. So we are really having a big fight, really, to deal with that. One thing I just want to add here is not, transparency has two sides of it, by the way. It's not enough to talk about transparency in governments without talking about transparency in the private sector, because corruption is a crime and has two partners. It's no good just to focus on the public official. For every corrupt public official, there is a dozen corrupt business people. And we need to talk to those guys too. So it's important to talk about transparency. And as American citizens, it's very important to talk to a resource and energy company about what they're doing in Africa. Why they are fighting tooth and nail against the new laws passed in the US to really try to stop corruption in the energy industry. Every time I open a magazine, Newsweek or Economist, I see this fantastic advertisement by these great corporations about how they care about this universe, what a wonderful policy they have, social responsibility, etc. This is the same guys who are doing all that mess in Africa.
Yeah.
So it's your responsibility here really to raise your hand. Shareholders here should ask questions. What is going on here? So it is a joint fight between you and me. I'm trying to do what I can in Africa. What are you doing here? Thank you.
Yeah. One way that, the point is the lack of transparency is not all in just developing markets. And I would encourage you to talk to the chief financial officers of large companies who are in fact legally liable when their companies. Yeah, I've tried and it's been not very helpful. But anyway, Dr. Ndema, we're very glad you're here. And maybe you want to give just an abbreviated version of your remarks, and then we can have you join our panel and have some questions. There's a couple of questions waiting to be asked. But
thank you very much. I want to apologize. I was taken for registration on the other side, and the roads are blocked all over the place.
Lack of transparency about where you were going.
Yes. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to these distinguished guests here. My name is Bitange Ndemo from the Kenya government. And we recently launched the Open Government Portal. And I was looking at what Abraham Lincoln said in 1863 about the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And you find that that statement is true even today, that we are trying to find what is for the people, how do we govern the people. It's more true in Africa now that we must move towards not controlling the people, but giving the people a chance to participate in the governance process in Africa. And what we have seen after the implementation of the open portal, you would be amazed the number of downloads that we have seen, the number of issues that have been raised. And we found that the original thought that we put data out there to make the government as a platform for innovation is not that. It's not actually the outcome. You find people are asking many questions about the spending in many areas. This has never happened. We are lucky in Kenya that we have a new constitution which guarantees freedom of access to information. This is in the constitution, and then we're trying to put a legal framework in which people can access this information. Because it's very key that this information is available out there. When we talk about food security in Africa, and then you find the same data that would enable food security is kept. The data that we put out includes the productivity levels on various parts of the country. And this is data that has never been available to the people. And government can no longer be in control of the data because they probably would not have as much to do with the same data because of the way they look at it. When you give it to several people, like now we have seen more than 3,000 downloads since we uploaded open data. We are hoping that you would begin to see, especially on food production, you'll be shocked to learn that as the drought ravaged northern Kenya, Kenya was still importing dried beef from Australia. And people are asking, why are you importing the dried beef? You have the sunshine here. We spent billions importing dried tomatoes from Spain. And you find that half of the tomatoes produced in Africa goes to waste. And yet, the drying process is using the sunshine. Africa has got the most sunshine than probably Spain, where we import these tomatoes from. These are the questions people are asking. And the government is sitting back, is that true? And of course, this has been happening. We are glad that the government of Kenya, through its vision, is looking towards actually empowering this. Part of the political reform is to make sure that people are empowered. You see what has happened from the Arab Spring in the Middle East to Britain's street protests. People are actually asking, we need information, we need to share in this. And the result is actually to provide this data. And hopefully Kenya would lead Africa in terms of participatory democracy, which we have started. And this is the only way you can eliminate corruption, as Moi Prime said here. There is no other way. The political means that we created the legal framework for eliminating corruption has not worked. But if you see the benefits we have seen in the last few years when we began to automate, it's amazing. We automated the state law office, the company registry. The revenue more than tripled. The lands office, the revenue more than tripled. So if Africa took advantage of automation and removing the inefficiencies we have, the resources we get from efficiencies actually is much more than what we come to look in the Western world as in form of aid. So I look forward to see that we actually lead Africa and not wait until the Western world comes to tell us that this is the best way of resolving the problem of corruption or participatory democracy. Thank you.
And congratulations. Okay, we have time for a couple more questions. Way in the back there. Just, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Karen Christensen. I'm from Publish What You Fund, which is the global campaign for the transparency of aid or foreign assistance. Firstly, I want to say it's an honour and a pleasure to be here, and it's extremely exciting, and congratulations to the team that have been behind this. I just wanted to join up a couple of the points that you yourself raised and people on the panel, that this isn't just about the transparency of developing countries, and that the costs of non-transparency, particularly of foreign assistance flows for those aid-dependent countries, in terms of waste and duplication of what is a very scarce and precious resource, aid. It's not much money we're putting in, but it's a precious resource. And Tim's point really about data. The aid transparency sector has increased dramatically in the last 6 months. We're looking at 33% of aid flows being out there by November. But we've really encountered this issue of more information going out, requiring a data standard to make use of it. Because as data goes out country by country, mapping it together becomes a bit of a nightmare, frankly, and the value of that data starts to drop if you can't then map it together. So it would be great to hear your experience and really in some of your feedback. We've got an international standard now that's emerging, but the key issue, it's good standards nobody notices. You don't notice till you leave the US that your plug doesn't fit in a UK plug hole. And that's really what we have to achieve, and I think everybody in this room and the US government and the UK government have got aid transparency commitments in there, but everybody else to actually make this international standard work so that that scarce and precious resource that is aid actually starts to get into partner country budgets and can be used to best effect.
Okay, thanks. Any comments? I'm not sure that was exactly a question, but it was a useful
I'd like to
comment.
respond to it
Yes.
whether or not it's a question. And it connects to an earlier question on the other side about top-down or bottom-up. The world is going through a bit of a bottom-up revolution. The top cover is really important, but it depends a huge amount on things working at the bottom. The standards problem, for the last, 17 years, I've been directing WTC. We've been doing standards because you need standards for people to be able to interoperate, to be able to get data between different countries compared. Yes, you have to have some standards. But one of the things we've definitely noticed is you have to pick your battles. The technology we've got now, the linked data technology, is different from any other technology we've had before in one fundamental respect. And that is you can do it bottom up. So you can start producing some data in one country and you can produce some data in another country. And then, like quilting together pieces of fabric to make a quilt, you join them at the edges, loosely. So lots of pieces loosely joined together make up a coherent set of data. And that happens because some of the data which you capture in one country just won't apply to other countries. And some of it does apply to other countries, but there's not, we could have a standards body about that, but nobody's really got the energy or the time to go on a degree because the benefit wouldn't be there. And there's other data where that data has been captured across in lots of different countries, and it's really a pain that it is not compatible. So at that point, you say, okay, let's go together and have a committee. And so then when you put it together a committee, you get people from the different countries to agree. That takes a lot of energy. It takes the commitment that if you agree on a standard which is not what you're doing now, your backup, you will change what you've been doing all these years and do what the community does, which is a lot of, which involves putting in extra effort. It's a lot of hard work for the individuals. So if you see people involved in that, buy them a drink. So yes, producing the standards is very hard work. W3C is happy to provide a framework for doing that sort of thing, but don't wait for the standard before putting your data out. The way the linked data works is you can put the standard out. It's brilliant. I can show it working afterwards, but you can put data out separately in different countries, and then afterwards retrospectively map it into the common standards, even without the cooperation of the people who put out some of the original data.
Thanks. I just want to add one other thing. I'm on the board of the Sunlight Foundation, which funds a lot of transparency efforts of various kinds. And one important thing is not simply getting the data, but getting meaning from the data. Having data standards helps, but what also helps is software tools that allow you to visualize, for example, who owns real estate next to a bridge that was just built. Does it happen to be the government minister's son-in-law, or just seeing all the correlations between data, seeing, just as in your business you look for trends going up or down, or which market is doing well and which isn't, the same kinds of visualization and understanding of the data are tremendously important once you get the basic data. Another question. No, can we have two? I see two questions here, so let's just very quick. You can ask both questions one after the other, and then we'll thank everybody.
Thank you. Mark Robinson from the UK Department for International Development, DFID. Thank you, panelists. Great presentations. An oft-made observation is about the unevenness of internet penetration in different parts of the world. And indeed, despite the penetration of mobile telephony, thanks to the efforts of Mo and others, there are many who are still not accessing that technology. What does the panel think can be done in terms of joined-up efforts to promote accelerated access in a cheap way to internet facilities for many people who do not have them at the moment? And how, indeed, can traditional media be linked to the effort to promote public interest and demand for the fruits of more open government? Thank
Okay,
you.
and we're going to get the second question as well. My answer to that would be to clone Mo, but go ahead.
Hi, thanks. It was great to listen to it, and I listened a little bit with envy. I'm sorry, I'm Swati Ramanathan. I'm from India. I'm the co-founder of Janagraha, Center for Citizenship and Democracy. I listened a little bit with envy simply because I battle with the complete absence of data in urban India. There is no data to make transparent. You either have limited data or you have data which is like you're drowned in data. So we have the right to information, but the right to information is so difficult because you can ask for a specific question and want transparency about a specific aspect, but you will get drowned in data which is completely meaningless. So I think the first step in India, at least for us, and especially in urban India, is the data, collecting the data before you can even make it transparent. So I just want to make a comment on that. I don't know what your experience has been working with other countries, because you all seem to suggest that this kind of data is available to be made transparent everywhere.
These questions each deserve more than a sentence, but Karen, you've been silent.
One of the benefits of a transparency exercise is that it will expose the lack of data. It will expose the fact that the state oil company of Nigeria does not actually have any records of how much tax and royalty and signature bonuses the foreign companies have paid it. And that fact emerged thanks to the decision by the finance ministry to sign up to the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. So, you know, you need a trigger, but one of the great values is precisely that you can then stimulate the beginning of collection of data and the recording of data. Mo?
Really, for the first question, yes, I mean, I know about Africa. We really need broadband. And somehow we need to, I don't think this is something for government, that's something for private sector to do. And there's a number of projects going on, and I have been always berating people like Google's and Microsoft for their total lack of interest in Africa. They really could have participated in the building of this broadband infrastructure there, because they have double really dividend from there. Not only the investment itself can make money, but also that will facilitate the rolling out of their services to have 300 or 400 million more customers. And every time I speak to Google, they say, oh, we couldn't work out a business plan. I said, send your guys to me. I'll show you how to make a business plan if you cannot make it. So I'm glad to have the chance to say this at the Google's office here. And I just invested in a company called O3B, the other 3 billion. Those guys raised $1.5 billion to build a satellite operation over Africa to provide broadband. I invested $30 million, and I was shocked to find that Google invested $5 million. Google is 100 times richer than me. So that's a question really for Larry Page and his friends here. That's one thing. As for the sister there, we have been screaming for a long time about the decline of the statistical offices in Africa. We had the statistical offices before, but they declined. And we say, look, you cannot drive a car, you cannot fly an aeroplane without instruments, without knowing, without data. How can you run a country without data? And that's also a question for David. Maybe part of your support to Africa should be really in helping building this statistical office, at least to know what is the outcome of your aid, where to put your aid, and then that's something important. Short of that, I may suggest you start fasting, because that's the only way to work things out in India, I suppose. You know.
Thank you. Okay, I'm being cut off, but if you have one sentence, please say it, and then they're going to just turn off the mics on us. So.
Okay. I just wanted to answer the first question, that one of the strategies we're employing is that we're shifting the whole government services into the mobile platform, because the penetration rate on the mobile platform is around 70%, and 3G gives you very high speeds. For fixed broadband, we are actually forcing the operators to begin to share infrastructure and also to develop open access platforms, because private sector is very wasteful. And I think he can tell you that you find fiber optic from 4 different operators running through when you need one. So that is where the government can intervene, create these open platforms, lower the cost of access, and be able to penetrate throughout the country.
Thanks. And Tim's going to interrupt as well.
Sorry, but apologies to the timekeepers. I just have to respond to that question, because that question, it was exactly that question that a few of us asked a couple of years ago. So how many people use the web anyway? And we found out that 20% of the world use the web. And we realized that actually 80% of the world have got signal at home. So if you were there at their home, you'd be able to, on your phone, get the web. What was wrong in between those things? What is it? Well, it can be lots of things. It can be, I don't have a phone. Or it could be my phone doesn't have a web browser. It means the phone has a web browser and I don't really understand what the web is. Or maybe I understand what the web is, but there's nothing in my language. Actually, it's all in English and Chinese. So there are an awful lot of reasons, and it's a very complicated thing. But as a result of looking at that difference between 20% of the world actually using the web and 80% having signal, we founded the Web Foundation, the World Wide Web Foundation, because of that issue. And it's targeted at that issue. Go to webfoundation.org, and it's a place to discuss it. Obviously, it's a huge problem, but there are lots of issues at the data level and at the content level, rather than only just at the sort of access to the internet level. Thanks.
Thanks.
Great question.
So the other thing is they might not know how to read, and that's another big challenge.
Yes, what she said.
So all of you, I want to, as the sort of governing official of this panel, I want to applaud you for wresting control from my hands. I want to thank some great panelists and a great audience. Now you can go and see how to actually do this stuff, because what we didn't get to talk about is the challenges that we face in actually taking the information, getting people to collect it, getting people to understand it. Thank you all very much, and thanks.
Thank you.